Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to break down Apple's various product segments and how they performed in the latest quarter, as well as provide some commentary from Apple's management team as to why things turned out the way they did for these various product categories. So let's jump into it. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now. All right, so the overarching theme throughout this different product segment breakout is that the company is managing thoughtfully and deliberately through an uneven macroeconomic environment. Uneven based on geography, right? The US economy is performing better than the European economy, which is doing better than the Chinese economy. And then uneven in terms of different consumer segments. Lower income consumers are doing much worse than higher income consumers, and Apple has to manage through all of that because they have a breakdown of all those segments I just previously discussed. Starting with the iPhone. So revenue in the March quarter was $46 billion, which was down 10% year over year. That's been the big story, is very little innovation from Apple in its premier product, the iPhone, and it's starting to show up in results. Revenue was down 10% year over year in this product. However, the company saying they still saw growth in iPhone in some markets, including mainland China, and according to Kantar, during the quarter, the two best-selling smartphones in urban China were the iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Pro Max. Nevertheless, data came out throughout the quarter, which I highlighted. I made a video about highlighting that the Chinese-based smartphone companies, are gaining massive market share at the expense of Apple so far in 2024. Even though these two were the top-selling phones in China in the latest quarter, overall, they are losing market share in China at an alarming rate. And I think that's why management made a point here to highlight that the iPhone is still the best-selling phone in China, the 15 and 15 Pro Max, because they've been hearing so much from investors talking about and being concerned with the iPhone's performance in China and the rising competition from homegrown rivals. The company goes on to discuss the Mac, which in the quarter, revenue came in at $7.5 billion, which was up 4% year over year. And they had a launch of a new product in early March with the new 13-inch and 15-inch MacBook Air. So these would only partially be reflected in the March quarter results. These will be more reflected in the next quarter and onward. The MacBook Air is one of the more popular MacBooks in its lineup, so that should fuel growth in the Mac computer segment. Also, Apple just came out with the M3 chip. That's going to lead to some growth. That's not across the board available yet. They've made it available in a few products, in a few Mac computers. It's not in the higher end models yet. And so that will drive some demand for Mac. But additionally, one final point here on the Mac, the replacement cycle will also help Apple in this regard. I've heard from other computing-focused companies that operate in the personal computer industry, including Intel, Micron, Microsoft, AMD, and others, suggesting that growth in the personal computer segment will accelerate throughout 2024 and then continue accelerating in 2025. And that's because people that bought computers in 2020 and 2021, when we were working from home and learning from home, those will need to be replaced. Now, not all of them will be replaced, as we're not working from home or learning from home anymore. That is for most of you. I still mostly work from home, save for the couple of days I go to campus to teach. Other than that, I work from home when I'm making these videos. But for the majority of people, they're back to work. Roughly 10 to 15% of working days are now done remotely, whereas during the pandemic, that was significantly higher. Still, some of those computers need to be replaced, and that's going to boost demand for personal computers. Apple will benefit in this segment. iPad revenue for the March quarter was $5.6 billion. That was 17% lower And Apple's management saying the reason why this was so much lower is because last year they launched the M2 iPad Pro and the 10th generation of iPad. And so that drove a lot of demand last year. And so now when you're comparing this year with last year's jump, it's not easy to beat those numbers because those numbers were a big boost from the prior year. So that's why iPad struggled in the current quarter. Now, the wearables, home, and accessories segment, which includes the Apple Watch and the AirPods, which are incredibly popular, came in at $7.9 billion. That was down 10% year over year. And Apple again saying that was because of a difficult comparison. Last year, they launched a newer version of the Apple Watch, a big step up, and they launched the next generation AirPods, which I don't think was much of an improvement from the previous generation. Still, management acknowledging that that newer generation drove a little bit extra demand in that category. And now this year, comparing it to last year, it makes it tougher to beat that quarter where it had the new releases. The next segment, services. This segment performed well, $23.9 billion in revenue, and that was up 14% year over year. The services segment is a big reason why investors are enthusiastic about Apple stock, despite what you're noticing up above, declining hardware sales coming from iPhone, wearables, iPad, really little innovation other than the Vision Pro, which, at a price tag above $3,000, what were you expecting? That's not going to get broad-based adoption unless it was like a home run product that made people go out of their way to spend over $3,000 on it. So those are the big complaints from Apple stock investors, are that the company hasn't really innovated. And if you're not delivering products, you're not really going to boost the services segment much longer. It's the products, it's the hardware that gets people into the ecosystem that gets them to purchase services from Apple. If you have the iPhone and the Apple Watch, you're very likely to subscribe to Apple Music. If you have the iPhone and the Apple Watch, you may subscribe to Apple One, which is the combined subscription service where you get storage, you get Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, and you get Apple News, that whole bundle. You're more likely to subscribe to that if you have an Apple computer, an Apple phone, and an Apple Watch. And so it's the hardware that drives sales of the services, not the other way around. So yes, services can continue growing for some time with flat-ish to small revenue growth from the hardware segment, but longer term, Apple needs to innovate in the hardware segment, which, to their credit, they have. They have innovated over decades. Now, in the short term, you've had these periods of extended duration where it seems like, they're old news. They haven't innovated in a while. They haven't delivered a product that gets people excited. And then all of a sudden something comes out and it gets people excited about Apple again, right? The first was the Mac computer. Then, of course, the iPod, then the iPhone, the iPad, and then we had a few years of nothing. And the Apple Watch has been pretty strong, right? $7.9 billion in revenue in that segment. The Apple Watch and the AirPods, those are pretty innovative products that drove consumers to spend tens of billions of dollars per year on those products. And so investors are now waiting, right? It's been a while since the Apple Watch and the AirPods first came out. Now investors are waiting for something new. So interesting breakdown here from Apple and their various segments and the reasons behind the slowdown in the various segments, although the bigger picture reason is the lack of innovation. If you delivered something innovative that got customers excited, they would go out and buy your products, right? Instead of, explaining like last year we did something that was an upgrade and now this year it's hard to beat those, right? Just, do what Apple does, innovate, and customers will buy your products. You've built that brand loyalty, you've built that trust, you've built that adoption where if you come out with something exciting at an attractive price point, people are going to buy it. People are going to try it out, at least give you a try. And so that's what Apple's got to do now. Investors are waiting. Before I let you go, let me tell you about the greatest deal on YouTube. With just a click of a button, you can get free financial analysis from a professor with decades of investing experience. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.